You know that moment when you open your banking app, even though you checked it just a few hours ago. Nothing dramatic happened, no big purchase, no unexpected bill. And yet your hand reaches for the phone almost automatically. A quick glance just to see the number again. For a second, there's relief. Then the mind starts calculating, quietly, almost in the background. If this bill hits tomorrow, and that subscription renews next week, and groceries cost roughly this much, before long you're doing small mental simulations about the future. Not because anything is wrong right now, but because something inside you wants to make sure it won't be. Most people don't talk about this habit, but if you've ever noticed yourself checking a bank balance repeatedly, sometimes daily, sometimes multiple times a day, you probably heard it framed in simple ways. People might call it anxiety, or obsession with money, or say you're too worried about finances. And when something gets labeled like that, it quietly carries a little bit of shame, as if the behavior itself means you're doing life incorrectly. But that explanation misses something important, because the real reason many people check their bank account over and over isn't actually about money. It's about certainty. What's happening in that moment has more to do with how the human brain manages uncertainty than with how much money is in the account. Neuroscientists have studied something called prediction error, the brain's constant effort to anticipate what's coming next. Your mind is always trying to reduce the gap between what it expects and what might happen. When the future feels unclear, the brain searches for signals of stability. For some people, that signal becomes the bank balance. It's a number that represents something very specific: safety, control, continuity. Each time you check it, your brain briefly resolves uncertainty. The number is still there. The system still holds. Nothing collapsed overnight. So the nervous system settles, just slightly. But here's the quiet part people rarely mention. The relief doesn't last very long, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your uncertainty itself is endless. There will always be another upcoming expense, another economic headline, another imagined scenario the mind can simulate. So the brain repeats the behavior that momentarily worked. Check again, just to make sure. For many people, this pattern didn't appear randomly. It often grows from environments where stability wasn't guaranteed. Maybe money felt unpredictable growing up. Maybe adults around you worried about bills in ways that were impossible not to notice. Or maybe you experienced a period in life where financial uncertainty arrived suddenly and caught you off guard. The nervous system remembers those moments, not as clear memories, but as patterns. And one of the most common patterns the brain develops is quiet monitoring, staying aware, keeping track. Because if you see change early enough, maybe you can prepare. That doesn't mean everyone who checks their account frequently had financial hardship. Human wiring varies in many ways. Some people regulate uncertainty through planning, others through information, others through routines. None of these strategies are better or worse. They're simply different ways the mind tries to create stability in a world that rarely offers guarantees. But there's also a subtle paradox hiding inside this habit. The same awareness that helps you stay responsible with money can also keep your mind gently tethered to the possibility of loss. In psychology, attention acts like a spotlight. Whatever it focuses on begins to feel larger. When the spotlight repeatedly lands on financial numbers, the brain can start interpreting those numbers not just as resources, but as signals of safety itself. And when safety becomes tied to a fluctuating number, even small changes can feel emotionally louder than they really are. Yet there's another side to this pattern that often goes unnoticed. People who monitor their finances closely tend to develop something else alongside it: sensitivity to long-term consequences. They think ahead. They calculate trade-offs. They notice patterns that others ignore. Those qualities aren't weaknesses. They're forms of awareness, and like most psychological traits, they come with both strengths and costs. The habit of checking your bank account isn't evidence that you're anxious, broken, or overly attached to money. More often, it's the nervous system trying to maintain a sense of predictability in an unpredictable world. A quiet attempt to stay prepared, to stay steady, to make sure the ground beneath you is still there. And once you see that pattern clearly, something subtle changes. The behavior stops feeling like a flaw and starts looking more like a strategy your mind developed to protect you. A strategy that made sense when it formed. Because the truth is, the human mind is always building small systems to help itself feel safe. Sometimes those systems are obvious, and sometimes they look like something as simple as opening a banking app for a few seconds, just to see that the number is still there. And if you recognized yourself somewhere in that moment, you might find it interesting how many of our everyday habits quietly reveal the deeper ways our minds learn to survive. Because this one pattern, this small urge to check, is only one of many signals the brain sends when it's trying to feel secure in the world.